It feels like we're living through this moment of just intense, rapid change. The ground seems to be shifting under our feet everywhere you look, in technology, in global conflict, even in our own towns and cities. But what happens when you start to connect the dots? What's the bigger story that's being told?
So, let's start with a question that, until very recently, sounded like pure science fiction. Imagine you have an idea for an app. You describe it, maybe it's a social network for hikers or a tool for your business, and an AI just builds it. The whole thing. Front end, back end, database, everything. Right there in front of you. What would that change? Well, guess what? That's not science fiction anymore.
And this really gets us to our first theme. We are in the middle of a new kind of industrial revolution. One that's being driven by what people are calling AI agents. And this isn't just about chatbots getting a little bit smarter. No, this is a fundamental leap in what AI can actually do. The breakthrough that's kicking all this off comes from a tool called Manus 1.5. It dropped in mid-2025, and it's the first AI agent out there that can take a single detailed text prompt and spit out a complete working web application. You describe it, and it builds it. It's really that simple.
And you have to appreciate the sheer scope of what building an app means here. We are not talking about some flimsy visual mock-up. Manus 1.5 generates the entire full-stack scaffolding. That's the whole digital foundation, from the server right up to the user interface. It builds in secure logins. It integrates a real database so the app can actually save and use information. And get this, it can even embed other AI models right into the app it's creating. This is a huge, huge leap.
What's really staggering is the speed of this change. Just a few months ago, in April of 2025, the best AI tools could maybe generate a user interface for you, and that task would take about 15 minutes. Today, this new system builds a complete working application in under 4 minutes. We went from making pretty pictures of an app to building the real thing almost overnight.
So does this mean developers are out of a job? Well, not exactly. The way they see it, this isn't a replacement. It's more like a powerful new partner. One review put it perfectly, saying it's like having a tireless junior dev in the room with you. It just handles all the tedious, repetitive setup work, which frees up the human developers to focus on the really hard stuff, the complex architecture and strategy that makes a product truly great.
Now, of course, this kind of technological arms race is being fueled by an absolutely insane war for talent, and it can really be summed up by just one number: $100 million.
Yep, that's the kind of signing bonus Meta is supposedly offering to snatch top AI researchers away from rivals like OpenAI. It's just the clearest signal you can get of a super high-stakes, incredibly expensive talent war, where the smartest people have become the most valuable resource on Earth.
But here's the thing. This same disruptive, accelerating energy isn't just staying in the world of tech. It's spilling over and completely reshaping the global battlefield where all this digital disruption is becoming dangerously kinetic.
You just have to look at the headlines from mid-2025. They're incredibly stark. Long-simmering tensions between Israel and Iran finally boiled over into direct military conflict, with devastating strikes that have targeted senior commanders, nuclear scientists, and critical infrastructure.
And this isn't some isolated event. It's actually part of a much wider pattern. At the same time, in Ukraine, Russia launched a single attack on Kiev using over 400 drones. And it's not even just countries anymore. In Haiti, both the government and the gangs they're fighting are now using drones to wage war in crowded cities. This advanced, cheap, accessible tech is changing the face of conflict everywhere. So this new reality is forcing a total, fundamental, strategic rethink all over the world. All the old ideas about defense and deterrence are getting tossed out the window, and governments are just scrambling to figure out what to do next.
And you can literally measure this change in dollars and cents. For years, NATO couldn't get its members to hit a defense spending target of 2% of their GDP. Well, now, not only are most of them flying past that number, but there's serious talk of a new target, 3.5%. That's a direct economic response to a world that feels much more dangerous.
So we have these huge external pressures, right? But what's really fascinating and also pretty worrying is how that same sense of disruption and fracture is echoing right here at home. It's creating what you might call a new and much more fragile social contract.
Just take the economy. For the first time in American history, the unemployment rate for young college graduates is actually higher than the national average. That basic promise we all grew up with, that a degree is your ticket to a stable life, is starting to crack.
And you can see people are literally voting with their feet. Just look at this data. Between 2019 and 2024, California and New York lost a combined total of over 2 million people. At the same time, states like Texas and Florida have seen these massive population booms. It's a huge demographic and economic realignment away from the traditional centers of power.
And when you have this kind of economic anxiety and these huge population shifts, it just pours fuel on the fire of political tension. And that pressure isn't just being felt during big national elections, it's boiling over at the most local level of our government.
Honestly, this chart is it's shocking. It tracks the number of threats and harassment incidents against local officials in the U.S. every month. And that trend line is just steep and unforgiving. The very people who run our schools, our towns, our election boards, they're facing this unprecedented wave of hostility. It points to a really dangerous breakdown in just basic civil respect.
Okay, so let's just step back for a second. You've got revolutionary technology blowing up entire industries. You have escalating global conflict changing the very rules of war. And you have these deep social fractures destabilizing things right here at home, all hitting at the exact same time. It really brings us to one central question. How is this all going to end?
You know, this cover from The Economist back in June of 2025, I think it just captured the global mood perfectly. Against this backdrop of a torn Iranian flag, it just asks that simple, profound question that seems to be hanging over absolutely everything right now.
So let's just put the pieces together one last time. We've seen an AI that can literally conjure up a software company from a text prompt, completely changing how we think about work and innovation. We've seen a new kind of warfare where cheap, plentiful drones are the weapon of choice. And we've seen a society at home that's just buckling under economic displacement and political rage. And the most important thing to get here is that these are not separate stories. They're not isolated events. They are all deeply interconnected symptoms of a world being reshaped by technology and global competition at a dizzying, almost overwhelming speed.
And that leaves us with a final, unavoidable question. When the pace of change in our jobs, in our security, and in our own communities all accelerate at the same time, how do we adapt? What new skills do we need? What new rules do we have to write? And maybe most importantly, what happens to the people who can't keep up?